Let's do it.
Rolls out to the right. 5 seconds to go in the first half. Dante fires deep to the left. Moss caught it at the 11, but now he pitches it to Mo Williams. Touchdown!
You gotta be kidding me!
All right. And welcome back to another episode of the Climbing the Pocket podcast. This is actually a special edition of the Climbing the Pocket podcast. As you all know, it's draft season. Draft season is JR season. We're actually recording this on the day that JR released his 2018 NFL draft guide. If you don't already have it, go ahead. Hop over to climbingthepocket.com, make that purchase. It's only $5. Benefits a good cause. But what we're going to be doing for you guys here over the next couple of weeks as we head into draft season, giving you a little bit of a deep dive into each of these position groups with JR and Miles going in and really letting us know the scouting reports and some of the important details about some of these top prospects. So don't have the full crew tonight. Got my man JR on here. So JR, man, how you doing? You ready to get in here and talk about these defensive linemen?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I'm excited. Make sure you go get that draft guide if you haven't already.
Yeah, man. And how you feeling about the reception we're getting for the draft guide so far? A lot of interest.
Good, man. You know, I didn't expect it to be as hot as it is right now, but I'm glad to see the intrigue and everybody seems to be happy with it. It's very, detailed. I put a lot of time into it, and I'm glad to see the hard work pay off, and especially to see everyone so happy about it.
That's awesome, man. Well, you put a lot of work into it here, and I guess let's let the listeners get a bit of a payoff from this. So we're going to start off today with the defensive tackles, and we're just going to go through your top 5. And this, giving you a little taste of what you get if you go and hop on over, climbingthepocket.com, hit on over to the 2018 draft guide page, only $5. You get the full thing. But we're just going to give you the top 5 today. So starting off, defensive tackles, or I guess we won't say defensive tackles. We'll say, interior defensive linemen. JR, who's your number 5?
So sitting at number 5, Team Canada, as you know, and that you're proud of, Jayson.
Yes,
it's Nathan Shepard from Fort Hays State. Everyone knows, or everyone doesn't know about his story and just how far against these odds that he's had to overcome. Before he got to Fort Hays State, he was at a small school called Simon Fraser. I believe that's how you pronounce it, in Canada, which is a small school. He had some financial situations or some issues up there. He ended up dropping out of school because he couldn't afford it, wasn't on scholarship or anything like that. Ended up as a construction worker for 2 to 3 years because that was the only way he could make a living. He sacrificed some stuff by doing that. He saved his money while doing that and got his way back into school. He wound up at a small school called Fort Hays State, which is in nowhere in the middle of Kansas. Nobody even knows where it was when Nathan Shepard's name actually started to surface during the pre-draft process. So he's traveled a well road to get to this point. What are you getting with Nathan Shepard? I mean, he's just a physical freak, 6'5", 315 pounds. His stock really took off at the Senior Bowl. He really dominated down there before breaking his hand. He only practiced for one day, but he stood out that one day he was down there, and a lot of people were interested to see how he would test at the combine. He was in that second wave of invitations once he stood out at the Senior Bowl. Overpowering guy, very good hand usage. And the first thing you notice is just how well put together he is. He doesn't look like he has an ounce of body fat on his entire body. And the guy I compared him to is Larry Ogunjobi from the Cleveland Browns. Very similar backgrounds as well, very similar stories. Both went to small schools. Ogunjobi ended up going to UNC Charlotte, and Nathan Shepard obviously went to a much smaller school in Fort Hays State. But they're both guys that you can put into the interior front of your defensive line. I think he'll probably be a depth piece early on in his career, but 2 to 3 years down the road, I think he can end up being a starter for you.
Man, that's awesome. And moving along to number 4, I guess. Who do you got coming in at number 4 on your interior D lineman there?
Daron Payne, defensive tackle from Alabama. Obviously, he didn't go to a smaller school like Nathan Shepard went to. He went to the national champions, or he actually won a national championship last season. A lot of mixed opinions about Daron Payne, and it comes from his lack of production. He really hasn't had a lot of production, and he only really stood out in one game, and that was in the national championship game where he just wreaked havoc. He was unblockable in that game, and they ended up winning against Georgia. But before that point, he was just kind of, man, he was very hot and cold. His motor really comes and goes, and he kind of plays when he wants to. Now, he's more of your true run-stuffing defender as opposed to a guy that's going to push the pocket or collapse the pocket or give you some type of pass rush down in and down out. And a lot of people were saying that he really doesn't have a lot of value outside of that, and he's kind of maxed out as a player. They're not sure how high his ceiling really is. My comparison for him that I use in my draft guide is Timmy Jernigan. And they're very similar players because they're not guys that's going to consistently have high sack totals or very high pressures on passing downs. But if you're asking them to play a gap against the run, they're those guys that can just be stout and take on those double teams and help you in the run game.
And so that is that really what it is for you? Because when I look across, some of the other draft guides that are out there or big boards that have been published, it seems that Daron Payne, maybe he's getting that Alabama bump because it seems like every year, Alabama probably has a couple too many guys ranked a little bit higher than they should be by consensus. But when you look across, a lot of the draft guides and a lot of the big boards that are out there, Daron Payne's being, given first round grades and is listed as someone that a lot of, respected folks are thinking should go kind of early. Is it the lack of pass rush production that really has you bumping him down a little bit lower on your rankings?
Yeah, it is. And I just don't see a high ceiling like I do with some other guys who we'll talk about here in a couple seconds. I just don't see his ceiling being that high because of a lack of pass rush productivity. Yes, can he develop to be that type of guy? He can, but I just don't see that happening with him early on like I do see with some of these other guys that I had ranked ahead of him.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, let's move on to the next guy. Who do you got at number 3?
Taven Bryan, defensive tackle from Florida. He's a guy that's caught a lot of steam during the latter half of the pre-draft process. An interesting story I actually found out about him. He's the son of a former Navy SEAL, and Florida's former defensive line coach, Chris Rumph, gave him the nickname the Wyoming Wild Man because he's known for his insane work ethic. And he's from Wyoming, and he loves hunting deer in the Wyoming forest. So how did he end up all the way in Gainesville at Florida? I have no idea. He came all the way across the country to go to college, but it proved to work out for him. What are you getting with Taven Bryan? You're getting an extremely high motor player. And he's a guy that kind of needs to tame that a little bit because he plays really wild and out of control. And a lot of teams use that against him on screen passes and things of that sort. And his football IQ just really isn't high right now. Like I said earlier, teams use those misdirections and those screen passes against him. And what you see is he runs himself completely out of place. He just doesn't really know what's going on because he's just locked in and focused on getting up the field and getting to the quarterback. But against the run, he is a snap jumper a bit, but he times it up well sometimes. And he has a really good first step and a really good motor. And I think he has a very high ceiling. A lot of people have compared him to J.J. Watt. I don't want to go that far with him. My comparison for him is Cameron Jordan from New Orleans Saints, who is still a very good player.
Okay. And I guess it's a little surprising. Maybe it shouldn't be, but the next guy that you have listed up here on your list is a nose tackle. So I'm surprised that you have him so high here, but I guess who's number 2 on your list?
Yeah, big man, Vita Vea from Washington. Your typical two-gapping nose tackle, the guy that's head up over the center, can play both A-gaps on either side of the ball. Just a very physical, overbearing type of defensive lineman, probably one of the stronger players throughout the country. He came in at the combine 6'4", 347 pounds, and ran just a shade above a 5 flat. So moving that fast for that type of individual, he's supremely athletic. And what you see on this film is he's a really good mover, and he even plays on special teams. He's played on kickoff. He's run down on kickoff, and he also plays on punt return as well. So that just speaks to his athleticism and just how much of an unrealistic specimen he really is. But what are you getting with Vita Vea? You're getting that traditional nose tackle. Now, he's not going to make his money rushing the passer. That's not where he really does his damage. But he's a guy that, if you expecting him to play both A gaps and he can just take up space and just stuff the run, I think he's a guy that can give you supreme value there, and that's why I had him as a first-round grade.
Okay. All right. Well, last but certainly not least, bring us home here. Who is your number one interior defensive lineman?
It's my guy right here, man. This is my guy, Maurice Hurst. Despite the hard conditions, despite everything that he has faced in this pre-draft process, I think he's a phenomenal player. You talk about a guy that has a first step, who's a natural penetrator, can get through the line of scrimmage with ease. Very well-rounded defensive lineman. He's a traditional three technique, a guy that plays on the outside shoulder of the guards. Like I say, he's just a great penetrator, great personality. A funny nugget I found about him is he's actually an Uber driver. In the offseason, he actually brags about the 5-star ratings that he gets from his customers, and Jim Harbaugh was the person that actually told that story about him. So he has a great personality, but the caveat to him is that he does have the heart condition. Now, we don't know if it's a Nick Fairley type situation or a Star Lotulelei situation where he still went in the first round, and obviously everybody knows that Nick Fairley is probably going to be forced to retire because of his heart situation, but he has been cleared by Michigan's doctors. But each team will have their own special test when he does come in for top 30 visits, and I'm sure he probably won't be on some teams' boards because a heart condition is a scary deal, but it'll be interesting to see exactly where he is drafted because of this heart situation.
Well, all right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the pod. We're gonna get in, we're gonna get out quick. We're gonna run through these top fives. The first handful of these episodes that we're gonna get recorded for y'all will be, JR coming in here and breaking us down. But we're also gonna have Miles come in here. Miles, he likes to break down the guys on the outside. So he's gonna be getting in here to talk a little bit about the wide receivers, the tight ends, and the defensive backs in a couple more episodes. But JR, first one here, we got it in the books, top 5. Thank you for coming on and recording with me, and I guess I'll be talking to you a lot here in the next little bit, man.
Yeah, man, looking forward to it. It's draft season, and that's the best season.
All right, man. Well, have a good one.
Thanks, man.